The 1980s were more than just big hair and classic rock. It was the decade that gave us some of the toughest, most reliable tractors America ever built. These machines weren't just workhorses, they were legends that kept farms running strong decade after decade. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most reliable American tractors of the 80s, and trust me, number 1 might just surprise you. Number 1. John Deere 4440D. No list of dependable 1980s tractors can leave out the John Deere 4440. Introduced at the end of the 1970s and built into the early 80s, the 4440 became the archetype of the dependable row crop machine. Its turbocharged 466 cubic inch 6-cylinder diesel paired beautifully with Deere's quad range or power shift transmissions, giving farmers a broad spread of usable gears without the finicky behavior of early electronic controls. The legendary SoundGuard cab, tight, quiet, and remarkably comfortable for its time, kept operators fresher and more productive, which matters more than spec sheets ever show. What gave the 4440 its "just keeps going" reputation was the combination of a robust engine with conservative tuning and driveline components sized with margin. Cooling systems were ample, oil capacities were generous, and Deere's dealer network made parts easy to source. Routine issues, an aging hydraulic hose, a weepy rear main seal, a tired AC compressor were straightforward to address with common tools. Properly maintained, the 4440's 4066 engine often ran thousands of hours before needing major work. Farmers loved the way it lugged too. It wasn't a screamer, but it would pull a chisel or planter at a steady clip without drama. Even today, you'll spot 4440s planting beans, running augers, or pulling grain carts, which is perhaps the ultimate proof of reliability. They're still earning their keep. Number 2. John Deere 4450. If the 4440 set the standard, the 4450 refined it for the mid-80s. Deere's 50 series update brought improvements in hydraulics, power, and optional mechanical front-wheel drive (MFWD) that was becoming more common in American row crop operations. The 4450 again used the stout 4066 diesel, but with updates that improved efficiency and power delivery while maintaining the same slow-wearing character. Many operators consider the 4450 the sweet spot of the era, enough horsepower to handle larger planters and tillage tools that farms were adopting, but still simple in the ways that matter when a season runs long and money runs short. The reliability lens shines brightest on 3 elements. First, the transmission options remained conservative and proven. Deere's full power shift, in particular, had a reputation for durability with consistent oil changes and filter service. Second, the closed-center hydraulic system delivered predictable flow for planters and loaders without the quirks of later high-complexity systems. Third, the SoundGuard cab and better MFWD gave the tractor a versatility edge. It could do row work, hay work, and heavy tillage without feeling out of place. Owners who kept coolant chemistry in check and didn't push fuel settings beyond factory specs found the 4450 to be an honest, long-living partner. Number 3. Case IH Magnum 7120. Late in the decade, Case IH launched the Magnum series, and the 7120 quickly earned a reputation that borders on myth. Farmers were skeptical at first. Mergers, new badges, and corporate turmoil usually spell teething pains. Instead, they got one of the most durable powertrains of the era, a rock-solid 8.3-liter diesel mated to an 18-speed full power shift designed to take punishment. The Magnum's 7120 transmission didn't ask operators to baby it, and the engine's torque curve felt like a friendly hand on your back. Steady push, little fuss. Reliability here was the product of design discipline. Controls were thoughtfully laid out for long days. Service points were accessible, and the electrical system, while more complex than earlier models, avoided the fragile modules that plagued some competitors later on. The cab was a true step forward in comfort and visibility, and the front axle options stood up to loader work and heavy drawbar loads. Magnums became the tractor that farms bought to last, often handed down a generation with nothing more dramatic than routine clutch packs, brake service, and wear item replacements. Farmers trusted them to pull big discs, run sizable grain carts, and plant day after day without mood swings, and they delivered. Number 4. International Harvester 1086. The 1086 is the quintessential early 80s red tractor. Built in the late 1970s and widely used through the first half of the 80s, it carried the durable DT436 inline-6 diesel and a straightforward drivetrain that rewarded careful maintenance. International's cabs of the era were a mixed bag. Good visibility and functional, if not as quiet as Deere's. But the tractor's core mechanicals won fans. The 10086 developed a following because it was honest about what it was, a solid, hard-pulling machine that drank fuel at a reasonable rate and didn't demand constant tinkering once sorted. Reliability notes for the 1086 often center on the torque amplifier, TA. Abuse at TA, shift it under heavy load without care, or neglect fluid and cable adjustments, and you'll write checks. Treat it properly, keep the linkage adjusted, and address a weak unit before it fails catastrophically, and a 1086 will stack hours. The hydraulics were adequate for the implements of the day, and the engine could take long pulls in hot weather if the radiator was kept clean and the cooling system maintained. Many 1086s are still on hay duty, running augers or pulling wagons to this day, a testament to a design whose bones were built right. Number 5. Ford TW25. Ford's TW series brought the blue brand squarely into the 1980s. The TW25, with its big block Ford diesel and dual power transmission, earned a reputation for toughness without unnecessary complexity. It was the kind of tractor you put in front of a heavy tillage tool and expected to come back in one piece. No drama, no excuses. Operators appreciated the straightforward cab, the visibility over the long hood, and the way the tractor felt planted on rough ground. MFWD models added grip for wet seasons and heavy draft loads, which boosted the tractor's versatility. On the reliability front, the TW25's strengths were a stout bottom end, generous cooling, and service procedures that didn't require mysteries or special tools. The dual power system, essentially a two-speed power shift, proved long-lived with routine fluid changes and proper operation. Electrical gremlins were minimal for the day, and the hydraulics played well with planters and wagons that needed predictable flow. Many Ford dealers had deep benches of mechanics who knew TWs inside and out, which meant problems didn't linger. If you're looking at a surviving TW25 today, you'll usually find that the big questions are wear items, front axle play, ball joints and tires, rather than scary core failures. Number 6. Ford 7710 Series 2. Not every reliable 1980s tractor was a big horsepower brute. The Ford 7710 Series 2 proved that mid-sized utility and row crop tractors could be just as bulletproof and arguably more essential to day-to-day farm work. With its proven 4-cylinder turbo diesel, a steady 8 or 16-speed gearbox with dual power, and optional MFWD, the 7710-2 was famous for doing a little bit of everything. It fed cattle in winter, mowed and raked hay in summer, planted small grains in spring, and ran augers and sprayers in fall. Farmers valued that kind of dependable versatility as much as raw power. Reliability came down to straightforward engineering and a lack of drama. The engines responded well to regular oil changes and clean fuel. The transmissions were forgiving, and the hydraulic system, while not exotic, maintained pressure and flow with minimal fuss. One of the underrated strengths of the 7710-2 is parts availability. The platform's popularity meant filters, pumps, and seals stayed on shelves. For small and mid-sized operations, or as a second tractor on larger farms, the 7710-2 earned its keep year after year, often with 5-figure hour meters and original internals. Number 7. Allis-Chalmers 8070. By the mid-1980s, Allis-Chalmers was fighting to maintain its place among the big three tractor makers. Deere and Case IH dominated the row crop market, and Ford was pushing hard with the TW series. To compete, Allis poured its best engineering into the 8000 series, with the 8070 standing tall as the flagship. Built from 1981 to 1985, the 8070 represented everything Allis could muster to show farmers they still had the ability to produce durable, high-horsepower tractors. The 8070 was powered by the Allis-Chalmers 426 cubic-inch turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel, an engine with a solid reputation for reliability when properly maintained. Farmers who resisted the temptation to turn up the pump beyond factory settings found that the 426 would run for thousands of hours with little more than routine oil, fuel, and air filter changes. The engine had a steady torque curve, making it equally comfortable with heavy tillage tools and large planters. Transmission options gave operators flexibility. The 12-speed power shift was a standout feature, offering smooth gear changes under load, while the Power Director transmission provided a reliable alternative for those who preferred simplicity. Both systems were robust when maintained, and unlike some competitors' transmissions, they weren't overly complicated or fragile. The cab design was another highlight. For years, Allis had struggled to match the comfort of Deere's Soundguard, but with the 87T they finally closed the gap. The cab was quieter, more spacious, and better laid out than previous models. Farmers could spend long days inside without the fatigue and frustration that plagued earlier Allis designs. The addition of MFWD gave the tractor even more versatility, ensuring it could put power to the ground in all conditions. From a reliability standpoint, the 8070 earned respect for its well-balanced design. The cooling system was more than adequate when radiators were kept clean and maintained. The driveline was stout enough to handle long days of heavy tillage, and the electrical system was refreshingly simple compared to the growing complexity of later decades. Daily service points were easy to reach, meaning farmers were more likely to stay on top of maintenance. If there was a catch with the 8070, it was operator behavior. These tractors were built tough, but they weren't indestructible. Farmers who respected the factory settings and stayed on maintenance intervals enjoyed long, trouble-free service. On the other hand, tractors that were overfueled or neglected sometimes developed issues earlier. This made the 8070 a tractor where reliability was as much about the owner's discipline as the factory's design. In many ways, the 8070 was Allis-Chalmers' statement piece. A machine designed to prove the company still had the engineering chops to compete with Deere and Case IH. And for many farmers, it delivered exactly that. Even today, well-maintained 8070s continue to work fields across the Midwest, a lasting reminder of Allis-Chalmers' determination to remain a serious contender in the tractor wars. Number 8. White 2155 Series 3. If there's one tractor that perfectly represented White's philosophy in the 1980s, it was the 255 Series 3. By that decade, White wasn't trying to dominate the horsepower race or dazzle with cutting-edge electronics. Instead, the company leaned on its reputation for practical, no-nonsense machines that simply got the job done year after year. The 255 epitomized this workmanlike ethos: no flash, no gimmicks, just honest durability. Under the hood sat a Hercules 478 cubic inch inline-6 diesel, a big-bore, naturally aspirated engine that was all about torque. It didn't wind up like a turbocharged Deere or Allis, but it had a deep reserve of pulling power that made it perfect for tillage, planting, or heavy drawbar work. Farmers often describe the engine as lazy but strong, content to lope along at lower RPMs while still getting the job done. The Hercules was also remarkably straightforward to maintain. With no turbocharger or exotic injection system to complicate matters, it asked for little more than clean oil, clean filters, and attention to cooling. Behind the engine sat White's signature over-under hydraulic shift transmission, a 3-speed power shift unit paired with a traditional manual gearbox. This setup gave operators the flexibility of shifting under load without introducing the complexity of a full power shift. Reliability depended largely on how it was used. Farmers who treated the over-under like a race car shifter sometimes wore them out prematurely, but those who respected it, using it for sensible shifts under load, found it to be an incredibly durable system. The beauty of the design was that it could be serviced relatively easily if issues arose, and parts were generally available through the 1980s and into the 1990s. The axles and driveline on the 255 were generously sized. White didn't push components to their absolute limits, which gave the tractor built-in longevity. The hydraulic system was similarly straightforward but effective, delivering steady pressure and flow for planters, loaders, and wagons. Steering systems stayed tight with routine maintenance, and many operators remarked that the 255 felt predictable and planted in the field. The cab was another strong point. While it didn't match the sophistication of Deere's Soundguard or Case's quiet 94 series interiors, it was comfortable enough for long days. Visibility was excellent thanks to large glass panels, and the controls fell to hand naturally. Farmers appreciated that they didn't have to fight with the ergonomics. Everything was simple and logical, reflecting White's practical design philosophy. Where the 255 really earned its reputation was in long-term dependability. Owners quickly learned that if you greased it, fueled it, and took care of small problems before they became big ones, the tractor would keep showing up day after day. Cooling and lubrication systems were generously sized, ensuring components stayed within safe operating limits. Electrical systems were minimal, meaning fewer gremlins to chase. Farmers often joked that the 255 was the kind of tractor you could park in the shed for a few months, fire up again, and expect it to go to work with no drama. White didn't have the nationwide dealer network of Deere or Case IH, which limited the brand's overall footprint. But the farmers who did run White tractors tended to stick with them for life. There was a kind of loyalty among White owners, born out of years of steady, reliable service. For those loyalists, the 255 Series 3 was the poster child for what made White special. A tractor that didn't pretend to be fancy, but instead focused on the basics of durability, serviceability, and value. Even today, many 255s remain in service, especially on Midwestern farms, where White had its strongest presence. They're not collector's items so much as practical, usable machines, tractors that still earn their keep 4 decades after they first rolled off the line. Number 9. Steiger Panther PTA. When it comes to sheer size and brute force in the 1980s tractor market, few names carried as much weight as Steiger. Built in Fargo, North Dakota, Steiger specialized in 4-wheel drive articulated tractors at a time when prairie farmers were opening up massive acreages and needed machines capable of pulling the heaviest implements available. The Panther PTA series, produced in the early to mid-1980s, embodied everything Steiger stood for: strength, simplicity, and staying power. The Panther PTA models were powered by industrial-duty Cummins or Caterpillar diesel engines, typically ranging from 300 to 400 horsepower. These engines weren't farm-only designs. They were the same big cube power plants used in heavy trucks, construction equipment, and industrial generators. As a result, they were designed for extreme duty cycles and long lives under full load. Farmers often described them as virtually unkillable. With proper fuel and lubrication, it wasn't uncommon for these engines to run tens of thousands of hours before requiring major overhauls. The drivetrain was overbuilt in every sense. Heavy axles, massive differentials, and robust transmissions meant the Panther could absorb incredible stress without flinching. Depending on the model, farmers could choose straightforward manual gearboxes or durable powershift transmissions, both designed for longevity rather than finesse. These weren't machines for constant shifting or delicate maneuvering. They were built to hook to a massive chisel plow, set the throttle, and run sunup to sundown across thousands of acres. Steiger didn't waste time on unnecessary complexity. The hydraulic system was powerful enough to handle air seeders, drills, and other large implements, yet simple enough that pumps and lines could be serviced quickly in the field. Electrical systems were minimal, often amounting to little more than what was required to start the engine, power the lights, and run basic instrumentation. That lack of complexity was a blessing in the 1980s, when downtime during planting or harvest could devastate a farm's bottom line. One of the Panther's most distinctive features was its articulated frame design. While not unique to Steiger, the company perfected it, creating a tractor that could handle uneven ground and distribute its weight evenly across massive tires. The articulation joints were designed with serviceability in mind, and regular greasing kept them tight and reliable. Operator comfort wasn't the Panther's strong suit compared to smaller row crop tractors. The cabs were functional rather than luxurious, with enough space and noise control to get through a long day, but none of the refinements Deere or Case IH were introducing on their smaller machines. Still, farmers didn't buy Panthers for comfort. They bought them because they were the only way to cover thousands of acres efficiently. From a reliability perspective, the Panther PTA was as close to bomb-proof as tractors came in the 1980s. Failures, when they did occur, were usually limited to wear items: U-joints, hoses, bearings, or seals. These were things a mechanically minded farmer could fix in the yard without special tools or dealer intervention. Major component failures were rare, and when they did happen, parts were often shared with other heavy equipment, making replacements accessible. Even today, many Panther PTAs are still in service, often relegated to fall tillage or secondary roles. Seeing one chugging away behind a massive ripper is like watching a living museum piece, a reminder of an era when American-built steel giants ruled the plains, and reliability meant simplicity and strength above all else. Number 10. Case 2029-4. By the mid-1980s, Case was in transition. The farm economy was tough. Competition was fierce, and the company was preparing for its eventual merger with International Harvester. In the midst of all this, Case rolled out the 94 series tractors, a line that quietly built a reputation for durability and dependability. Among them, the Case 2029-4, produced from 1984 to 1988, became a standout as a quiet hero on many farms. The 2294 was powered by a Case-built 504 cubic inch six-cylinder diesel, a conservative but reliable engine tuned for long life rather than maximum horsepower. Rated at around 150 horsepower, it struck a balance between being powerful enough for heavy tillage and versatile enough for lighter field work. The engine wasn't flashy, but it was rugged, starting well in cold weather and running for thousands of hours with routine care. The tractor's defining feature was its 15-speed power shift transmission, a design Case had refined over years of production. Farmers quickly learned that the key to longevity was maintenance, keeping the oil fresh, changing filters on schedule, and managing heat. Those who respected the transmission's needs were rewarded with thousands of trouble-free hours. The power shift offered smooth, reliable shifts under load, making the tractor efficient for both field and transport work. The cab was snug and well laid out, with decent visibility and good ergonomics for its time. While not as quiet as Deere's Sound Guard, it offered a comfortable environment for long hours. Operators often praised the balance of the tractor, noting how stable it felt on heavy drawbar loads. The 2029-4 didn't feel overmatched or delicate. It felt like a machine built to handle steady work without complaint. Reliability extended across the rest of the tractor as well. The axles and final drives were solid, designed to absorb years of hard use without catastrophic failure. The hydraulic system provided consistent flow and pressure, supporting the implements of the era without fuss. Electrical systems were straightforward and dependable, a blessing in an era when more electronics were creeping into farm machinery. One of the 2029-4's biggest advantages was dealer and parts support. Case maintained a strong service network throughout the 1980s, and many parts remained available well into the 1990s and beyond. This meant that even as the tractors aged, they could be kept in top working order without excessive downtime. Farmers who bought 2294s in the 1980s often kept them for decades, adding thousands of hours with minimal drama. Today, the Case 2029-4 is still valued as a practical field machine rather than a collector's toy. Its combination of a strong engine, reliable power shift, and sturdy driveline makes it useful even by modern standards. For farmers looking for a dependable tractor from the 1980s, a well-kept 2029-4 remains one of the most attractive options on the used market. These tractors weren't just built for the fields, they were built to last a lifetime. The 80s gave us some of the strongest and most dependable machines American farmers could ever ask for, and many of them are still running today. So which of these legends do you think was the ultimate tractor of the decade? Drop your pick in the comments below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride, and don't forget to subscribe for more tractor history and farming legends. Until next time, keep it classic, keep it reliable, and keep it American.